At the Thanksgiving dinner, my daughter-in-law handed me a dripping mop and said, "Stop pretending you're sick, Evelyn. Clean this up, and maybe you can eat off the floor after." The laughter at the long mahogany table stopped cold. For a moment, only the soft hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. Then my son Michael's voice sliced through it. "Mom, don't use age as an excuse. You live here for free. Do something useful for once. Please, the guests for us." I stood there, clutching the mop handle as if it could keep me upright. The smell of turkey and rosemary felt suddenly nauseating. 10 faces stared back at me, waiting to see what I would do. Somewhere behind the polite smiles and glossy wine glasses, I could sense the quiet thrill of gossip being born. That night, I packed my suitcase and vanished. Hours earlier, the house had smelled of butter, cinnamon, and pride. I'd spent 3 days basting, chopping, cleaning every corner until the marble counters gleamed like mirrors. Kayla, my daughter-in-law, wanted everything to look Pinterest perfect. She said this Thanksgiving would set the tone for her new promotion. The irony was that every dish her friends were about to praise had passed through my tired hands. For 30 years, this had been my home, Robert's and mine. We'd raised Michael here. We'd hosted Thanksgivings filled with laughter and board games. Now it felt like a showroom I maintained for someone else's applause. The doorbell rang for the 5th time. Kayla's high-pitched voice floated from the living room. "Evelyn, could you bring out more dinner rolls, please?" Her tone was sugar over steel, sweet for her guests, sharp for me. I balanced the tray of golden rolls and walked into the dining room. 8 of her colleagues turned toward me, their laughter freezing mid-air. Their smiles wavered, unsure whether to greet me or pretend I was invisible. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker," one of them murmured, eyes sliding away. Kayla, in her sequined blouse, was telling a story about the spa renovation they planned for Christmas. Michael sat beside her, nodding like a proud husband. Not once did they mention that the meal, the decor, the embroidered tablecloth, all of it, had been my work. I turned back to the kitchen, pretending not to hear Kayla boast about the upcoming bathroom remodel, something I had quietly paid for from Robert's life insurance. It happened around 9 o'clock. I was at the sink rinsing the first round of dishes when a shrill cry echoed. Oh no! A glass of red wine had toppled across the white tablecloth I had hand-stitched last year. A cloth Robert once said made the table look like home. The crimson stain spread like blood across snow. Kayla's voice came again, sugary and commanding. "Evelyn, get over here, please." I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped into the dining room. Everyone stared at the stain. "We need to clean this up before it sets," she said, her smile tight. "Yes, of course." I turned toward the closet for the cleaning spray. "Wait," she said. The false warmth in her tone prickled my skin. She walked to the closet herself. When she came back, she was holding a mop, dirty water dripping from its strings. "Take this," she said loudly enough for the table to hear. "Since you like cleaning so much, you can start with this. And then maybe you can eat the crumbs off the floor like the dog you are." The words struck harder than any slap. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her, but the silence in the room confirmed every syllable. The mop handle pressed into my palms. Water spattered onto the floor. One guest shifted uncomfortably. Another cleared his throat, but no one spoke. Michael appeared from the den, beer in hand. "What's going on?" Kayla laughed lightly. "Your mom was just about to help us out. The tablecloth, remember?" Michael's eyes, once soft like his father's, looked right through me. "Mom, stop playing the victim. You can't expect to live here rent-free and not help. You have to earn your keep." "Earn my keep," I whispered. My throat felt raw. "Yes, you eat for free every day. The least you can do is clean up when we have guests." A ringing filled my ears. I searched the table for a sympathetic face. None. Only discomfort, pity, and relief that it wasn't them. So I knelt. My knees cracked. My hands trembled as I scrubbed the spreading stain. The dirty water mixed with my tears, turning the fabric pale pink. Someone murmured, "That's enough, Kayla." But Kayla only smiled and said, "Good job. Now pick up the crumbs under the table." I stayed kneeling, collecting napkins and bits of bread, while laughter resumed above me, forced and brittle. Every sound, every clink of silverware, felt like a nail sealing the coffin of my dignity. When I finally stood, my back screamed in protest. No one offered a hand. Michael didn't look up. "You can go to your room now," he said. "The adults are talking." I walked down the hallway that once smelled of Robert's aftershave and Sunday pancakes. Now it smelled of bleach and expensive candles. In my room, the house felt hollow. I sat on the bed we'd shared, the bed where I used to fall asleep against Robert's steady heartbeat. No tears came, only a quiet, seething stillness. I opened the closet, pulled out my old leather suitcase. Each item I folded, nightgown, photo frame, bottle of medicine, felt like closing a door that should have been locked years ago. I found the embroidered tablecloth. The red stain had dried into the shape of a heart. I folded it gently and placed it at the bottom of the suitcase. Then I set my house keys on the kitchen counter, 3 silver pieces of permission I no longer needed. At 3 in the morning, I slipped out the back door. The November air cut cold against my cheeks, but it tasted like freedom. Willow Inn on Main was the cheapest motel I could find that late. The neon sign buzzed. The carpet smelled faintly of cigarettes. But when I shut the door behind me, no one was yelling. No one was watching me like I was in their way. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, still wearing my flour-stained clothes. In the mirror above the dresser, a stranger stared back. Her gray hair was undone. Her face sagged with fatigue. 65 years, and I had somehow become invisible even to myself. "When did that happen, Robert?" I whispered into the dark. "When did I stop being your Evelyn and become their housemaid?" The room didn't answer, but somewhere deep inside, something small and stubborn began to stir, a pulse of anger that felt almost like life. I thought of the mop dripping on my hands, of Michael's voice calling me burden, of Kayla's eyes shining with triumph. And then I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who ran a catering business with Robert, who paid bills on time, who laughed too loud at her own jokes. That woman had not vanished. She had only been buried under years of guilt and servitude. The city outside was silent, except for the distant wail of a train. I promised myself that when the sun rose, I would not go back. For the first time in years, I didn't pray for forgiveness. I prayed for courage. And in that quiet motel room, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and second-hand furniture, I felt the faintest flicker of freedom, fragile, trembling, but alive. Tomorrow, I told myself, they would wake up to a spotless house and realize something was missing. Me. The first morning after Thanksgiving felt eerily quiet. I woke to the rattle of the old air conditioner in the corner of my motel room and the gray light sneaking through faded curtains. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. Then the ache in my back and the smell of bleach from my own clothes reminded me I wasn't home anymore. The digital clock blinked 7:42 a.m. In my son's house, Kayla would be opening the fridge, complaining that the leftovers weren't arranged aesthetic enough for her social media post. Michael would still be asleep, pretending not to hear her, and the kitchen would already be colder without the woman who used to wake up before everyone else. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. One new message. "Mom, where are you?" "Kayla's worried. You're acting childish." Another followed. "Mom, seriously, come home. Don't make a scene." A small laugh escaped my throat, half bitter, half disbelief. Childish. After what they'd done, the word tasted absurd. I put the phone face down and decided not to answer. Not yet. I changed into a clean blouse, brushed my hair, and stepped outside. The parking lot of Willow Inn was nearly empty. A man in a delivery truck was unloading boxes for the diner across the street. The sign read, Sunnyside Diner, Home-Cooked Happiness. The name made me smile. I hadn't had home-cooked happiness in years. Inside, the smell of bacon and coffee hit me like an old memory. A waitress about my son's age greeted me with a smile that wasn't forced. "Morning, ma'am. Just you?" "Just me," I said, surprised at how strange those words felt. She led me to a booth by the window. "Can I get you started with some coffee?" "Yes, please. Black." While she poured, I noticed the small things, the clatter of plates, the buzz of a conversation at another table, the sunlight bouncing off the chrome napkin holder. Ordinary sounds, but they filled the silence inside me with something warm. When she returned with the steaming mug, she asked, "Are you visiting town?" I hesitated. "Something like that." "Well, I hope you enjoy your stay, sweetheart," she said kindly. Her casual warmth pierced me deeper than any insult had. I felt my throat tighten, and to my horror, tears slipped down before I could stop them. "Oh, honey, are you all right?" "Yes," I said quickly, wiping my eyes. I'm remembering who I am." The waitress nodded like she understood. "That's a good thing to remember." After breakfast, a ham and cheese sandwich and the best coffee I'd had in years, I returned to my motel room. My reflection in the mirror looked steadier now. The woman staring back wasn't just an exhausted mother or a tolerated guest. She looked like someone on the verge of reclaiming something precious. I sat down at the small desk, opened my old laptop, and pressed the power button. The fan whirred to life like a sigh of recognition. That computer had been Robert's pride. We used it to manage our catering business back when we ran small events around Dallas. He used to tease me, saying, "Evelyn, keep your own books. Independence isn't selfish, it's safety." For years after he died, I'd ignored that advice, believing that family meant trust. But trust, I was learning, could rot quietly beneath the wallpaper of good manners. I opened my browser and logged into my personal account, the one Michael and Kayla didn't know existed. My fingers trembled as I typed the password, unsure what I'd even find. Then the screen loaded, and a number appeared, 243,922.36. I blinked, certain I was misreading it. The balance hadn't been that high last year. I scrolled through the transactions, line by line, watching my generosity play out in digits and dates. $1,800, monthly mortgage payment, automatic transfer. $4,000, air conditioning repairs, June. $8,000, master bathroom remodel, Kayla's urgent project. $600, x $12, SUV installments, Michael's temporary problem. $400, utilities, recurring. Every line felt like a bruise pressed twice. They had called me a burden while I'd been financing their lives. I covered my mouth, laughing softly, not from amusement, but from the shock of finally seeing the truth in numbers. For 3 years I had paid to be humiliated, paid to be erased. Robert's voice echoed in my head. "Keep your independence, Evie. People forget gratitude faster than bills." He had been right. I took a deep breath and clicked Settings, Automatic Transfers. There were 6 of them, totaling around $3,200 every month. I hovered over the Cancel button, my heart pounding as if I were about to jump off a cliff. I clicked once, then twice more. Each confirmation felt like unlocking a door that had rusted shut. Finally, a message popped up. All recurring payments successfully canceled. I sat back, staring at the glowing screen. It was the smallest action I'd taken in years, and the most powerful. A few hours later, my phone vibrated again. Michael. "Mom, this is getting ridiculous." Michael. "Come home. You're being immature." Michael. "If you don't come back tonight, I'm calling the police." I smiled and typed a single response. "I'm fine. I won't be coming back." The dots blinked for a while, then another message arrived. "What do you mean? Where are you going to sleep?" I typed back. "Somewhere I'm treated with respect." Then I turned the phone off. That afternoon, I returned to Sunnyside Diner. The waitress recognized me instantly. "Back so soon?" "I liked the coffee," I said, sliding into the same booth. "Well, that's a good reason as any." She poured me another cup, then nodded toward the small radio playing softly behind the counter. "You know, the world always looks different once you've had breakfast." I smiled. "You're right. I think I'm seeing it for the first time in years." I watched people come and go. Truckers, a young mother with a toddler, two old men arguing about football. None of them knew me, but their indifference was comforting. No one expected anything. No one used me. For the first time in decades, I could breathe without permission. Back in my motel room, I opened the blinds. The winter sun had started to set, painting the clouds in muted gold. My reflection merged with the view outside, an older woman silhouetted against a skyline of possibility. I took out a notepad and began to write. Not a letter, not a list of chores, but a plan. Call the bank on Monday. Transfer funds to a new account. Find a small rental, something simple with sunlight. Get a part-time job or volunteer position, just to feel useful on my own terms. It wasn't a grand plan, but it was mine. As I wrote, a lightness spread through me. I thought of Kayla's perfect dinner table, how she'd arranged those napkins into swans. I thought of the red wine stain blooming on the embroidered cloth I had folded into my suitcase. I imagined taking it out someday, washing it clean, spreading it on a table that belonged only to me. The sound of the next-door TV filtered through the wall, a commercial for a holiday sale. Families hugging, a woman unwrapping a diamond necklace. The usual theater of gratitude. I muted the noise with a quiet laugh. They could keep their staged happiness. I was done performing. Later that night, I found myself walking through the chilly streets of Dallas with a takeout cup of coffee in hand. The city lights reflected off the damp pavement. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. I stopped in front of a storefront displaying travel brochures. Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. Places Robert and I had dreamed of visiting when we retired. I pressed my hand against the glass, tracing the photo of a desert sunrise. "Maybe soon," I whispered. I didn't know where I would end up, but I knew where I would never return. As I walked back to the motel, I felt the faintest echo of confidence, the kind I hadn't felt since my 30s, when Robert and I started our first catering gig with nothing but a stove and ambition. That woman wasn't gone. She'd just been waiting for me to call her back. When I reached my room, I opened my laptop again and stared at the number glowing on the screen. 243,822.36. It wasn't just money. It was proof that I existed, that I had built and sustained, even when no one thanked me for it. I whispered to the screen, "My freedom fund." Outside, a gust of wind howled, rattling the window. The motel sign flickered, buzzing faintly like a heartbeat. I didn't feel fear anymore, only resolve. Tomorrow, I'd call the bank. Tomorrow, I'd start over. But tonight, for the first time in years, I allowed myself something small and sacred: peace. I turned off the light, lay back on the narrow bed, and let the sound of the wind carry me into sleep. No longer the invisible housekeeper of someone else's story, but the author of my own. Monday morning smelled like burnt motel coffee and freedom. I sat at the small desk by the window, the weak Dallas sunlight spilling across the notepad where I'd scribbled my new plan. Call the bank. Cancel everything. For years, I'd been the invisible hand keeping that house alive, paying the mortgage, the water bill, even Michael's car insurance, while they treated me like a freeloader. That irony alone gave me enough adrenaline to dial the number. The hold music was cheerful, oblivious to the revolution it was about to score. "National Bank of Texas, this is Ms. Harper speaking," came a pleasant voice. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Evelyn Parker. I need to make some changes to my account." "Yes, Mrs. Parker. May I verify your information?" I gave her my details. The clicking of keys followed. I see here you have several recurring transfers: mortgage, utilities, insurance, totaling approximately $3,200 monthly. What would you like to change? I looked out the window. A crow perched on the power line, black and confident. Cancel all of them, I said. Effective today. There was a pause. All of them? Yes. May I ask if you'd like to redirect those funds elsewhere? No. I'd like to keep them where they belong, with me. Ms. Harper's tone softened. Understood. It will take a few minutes to process, Mrs. Parker. Take your time, I said, though my heart beat faster than it had in years. As I waited, I thought about that house, the white fences, the perfectly trimmed hedges, Kayla's ceramic pumpkins lined on the porch. For 3 years, every smile she'd given me had been financed by the silent transfer of my money. Every compliment, every "You're such a blessing, Evelyn," had been paid for in installments. The keyboard clicking stopped. All recurring payments have been successfully canceled, Ms. Harper said. Would you like confirmation emails sent? Yes, please. Is there anything else I can do for you? Yes, I said, surprised by my own firmness. I'd like to open a new savings account at a different branch across town and transfer most of my funds there. She didn't ask why. Perhaps she heard something in my voice, a quiet finality that needed no explanation. When the call ended, I stared at the screen for a long time. Such a small act, 5 clicks, a few sentences, and yet it felt like cutting the wires of a puppet show I'd been trapped in. By noon, my phone buzzed like an angry hornet. Michael, Mom, did you mess with the bank transfers? Michael, the mortgage bounced. Kayla is freaking out. Michael, Mom, pick up the damn phone. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I went back to Sunnyside Diner, my new sanctuary. The waitress smiled when she saw me. Afternoon, Miss Parker. Same coffee? Yes, please. She poured it without asking anything else, and I loved her for that. Around me, the diner hummed with life. People talking, forks scraping, someone laughing loudly at a joke. I watched the scene like a visitor from another planet, realizing I'd forgotten how ordinary kindness felt. When my phone rang again, I let it buzz until it stopped. Then it rang once more. Finally, I sighed and answered. Hello, Michael. Mom, thank God. What the hell are you doing? I'm drinking coffee, I said calmly. Don't play games with me. The bank said the mortgage payment was canceled. What's going on? I canceled it. You what? I canceled every automatic transfer I set up. The house, the utilities, your car, everything. A stunned silence filled the line. I could almost hear the gears in his mind grinding. Mom, that's impossible. You don't even... Why would you do that? Because, I said evenly, I realized I'm not a dependent. I'm the one who's been keeping you afloat. He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. You're exaggerating. Am I? I pulled the napkin closer and began writing down the numbers as I spoke. Mortgage, $1,800 a month. AC repair last summer, $4,000. Bathroom remodel, $8,000. Car payments, $600 a month for a year. Electricity, water, gas, another $400. Shall I keep going? Silence again. Mom, I didn't realize. No, you didn't want to realize, I interrupted. You let me believe I needed your charity when in fact I was financing your lifestyle. He exhaled sharply. Okay, maybe we've depended on you more than we thought, but you can't just cut everything off like this. We'll lose the house. Then you'd better find a way to pay for it yourselves. Mom, be reasonable. I was reasonable for 3 years, Michael. That's what got me here. I could hear muffled voices behind him, Kayla's sharp tone, the baby pitch of panic. Then he spoke again, lower. Please, Mom. Kayla made your favorite dinner last night. She wants to apologize. I'm not coming back. What do you mean you're not coming back? I mean, I'm in a safe place, and that's where I'm staying, he groaned. Mom, stop being dramatic. We're family. Exactly. And family should mean respect, not servitude. You're overreacting. Maybe, I said softly. But for the first time, I'm overreacting on my own terms. I ended the call before he could answer. My hand shook slightly, not from fear, but release. Later that evening, I sat by the motel window with my coffee cooling beside me. Outside, the traffic lights blinked in rhythm, red to green to yellow. For years, my life had been stuck on red, frozen by guilt and habit. Now, everything inside me said go. I opened my laptop again and reviewed the new balance in my fresh account. The confirmation email from Ms. Harper glowed in my inbox like a seal of emancipation. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Kayla, you're hurting Michael. You should be ashamed. He's your son. Another followed a minute later. Kayla, you think this is power? It's cruelty. I didn't reply. Instead, I whispered to the empty room, no, Kayla, it's justice. The next morning, I decided to take a walk through downtown Dallas. The winter air stung my cheeks, but the rhythm of my steps felt steady. For the first time, I wasn't hurrying to meet anyone else's schedule. I passed a storefront displaying holiday wreaths and paused at the reflection. An older woman in a long gray coat, hair pinned neatly, eyes clear. That was me. Not Mom, not the live-in grandma, not the housekeeper. Just Evelyn Parker. I walked into a small bookstore nearby, drawn by the smell of paper and coffee. A sign read, Second Chapter Books. The name made me laugh under my breath. I bought a used journal and a fountain pen. On the first page, I wrote, December 2nd. Canceled every payment. Bought myself peace. As I closed the book, a weight lifted from my chest. A lifetime of unpaid self-worth finally tallied and settled. That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, I answered on the second ring. Mom, Michael's voice was quieter. Kayla's crying. She says she didn't mean to humiliate you. She did, I said simply, and you let her. He sighed. She was stressed. We both were. The dinner just got out of hand. Out of hand, I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. She made me clean the floor with a dirty mop, Michael. That's not, Mom, come on. She didn't mean it literally. I still smell the bleach on my hands. There was a long pause. Then, almost pleading, he said, Can't we just forget it happened? Can you? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. You can't forget it because it did happen, and I won't pretend it didn't. He tried again. Mom, please, you're tearing this family apart. No, I said. I'm refusing to be the glue that keeps it together by erasing myself. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. For years, I had confused silence with peace. Now I understood the difference. That night, I returned once more to the diner. The waitress saw me coming and grinned. Evening, Ms. Parker. You look lighter today. Maybe because I finally let go of a few things, I said. She winked. That'll do it every time. As she poured my coffee, I realized she was right. Letting go was heavier than holding on, until it wasn't. I looked out the window. Across the street, the city lights reflected on the glass of the National Bank building, the place where my quiet rebellion had begun. For years, I had thought of power as something belonging to other people. Men, bosses, landlords, husbands, even children grown into arrogance. Now I understood power wasn't a gift someone handed you. It was something you reclaimed, click by click, choice by choice, until one day you realized you were the one holding the mop and deciding where it was going. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and whispered the only words that mattered. Never again. By Friday, the silence from my phone had turned into something else, a calm before the inevitable storm. I knew my son well enough to predict that his pride wouldn't let things rest. For years, whenever Michael felt cornered, he didn't apologize. He strategized. So when my phone rang that morning with an unfamiliar number, I already knew it wasn't a friend. Mrs. Parker, The voice on the line was crisp, professional. "My name is Mark Johnson. I'm an attorney representing your son, Michael Parker." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "Of course you are. I understand there's been a family disagreement," he continued. "Michael tells me you've abruptly cut off financial support for his household, which has created a significant hardship. I'd like to discuss a solution that benefits everyone. Does your solution involve me continuing to pay their bills?" "I'd say it involves restoring family harmony," he said, in the smooth tone of a man who'd rehearsed it too many times. "Family harmony," I repeated, letting the words roll on my tongue. "Tell me, Mr. Johnson, did Michael also mention that his wife humiliated me in front of 8 people at Thanksgiving?" There was a pause on the other end. "No, ma'am, he didn't go into specifics. Did he tell you she handed me a filthy mop and told me to clean the floor like a dog?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I wasn't aware of that." "Then you're not representing the facts," I said. "You're representing their convenience." "Mrs. Parker," he began, slightly flustered now, "I understand emotions are high, but cutting off all financial assistance isn't the way to solve things. Family problems should be addressed with communication, not punishment." I leaned back in the chair, staring out at the afternoon light hitting the motel curtains. "You're right about one thing, Mr. Johnson. This isn't punishment. It's freedom. Mine." Before he could respond, I ended the call. 2 days later, the second storm hit. I was reading a novel in my motel room when the phone rang again. This time, it was a woman's voice. Measured, polite, the kind that sounded rehearsed from years of dealing with delicate situations. "Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Sandra Garcia. I'm a social worker with the Dallas County Department of Human Services. I'm calling in response to an elder welfare report we received." I froze. "A what?" "An elder welfare report. Someone contacted us, expressing concern that you might be living in unsafe or unstable conditions, possibly without financial resources or adequate medical care." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Let me guess. The concerned relative is named Michael Parker." "I'm not at liberty to confirm who filed the report," she said carefully, "but I do need to ask you a few questions. Are you currently living alone?" "I'm staying temporarily at Willow Inn," I said. "It's perfectly safe. I'm in good health. I have all my medications, and I have plenty of money." She hesitated. "Can you clarify plenty?" "My personal bank account holds over $200,000, I said evenly. "I believe that qualifies as financially stable." There was a faint cough on the other end, surprise trying to stay professional. "That's certainly above the threshold we usually worry about." "I thought so," I said dryly. "May I ask if you have family nearby?" "I do. A son who reports his mother to social services because she stopped funding his lifestyle." Sandra tried to keep her composure. "I'm sorry, ma'am. That's not something we hear every day." "No, I imagine not. Well, from what you've told me, there's no reason for intervention. May I note that you're living voluntarily and independently?" "Please do," I said. "And while you're at it, maybe put a note that the actual victim of financial abuse here isn't the son, it's the mother." Her voice softened. "Would you like to file a report?" I smiled faintly. "No need. I've already solved the problem." I left. When I hung up, I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, cathartic sound that startled even me. Imagine that. My own son trying to have me labeled as abandoned, when the truth was that I had finally rescued myself. The knock came that evening, sharp and furious. 3 knocks, pause, then 5 more, louder this time. "Evelyn, I know you're in there." I sighed, my pulse steady. The voice was unmistakable, Kayla. When I opened the door, she stood there in the hallway, hair unbrushed, mascara smudged, eyes burning. Gone was the polished hostess. This was a woman stripped of pretense. "What do you want, Kayla?" "I want you to stop acting like a victim and come home," She snapped. You've made your point, okay? You embarrassed us? You froze the accounts? Now everything's falling apart. Congratulations. Everything's falling apart because you built your comfort on my back, I said. Oh, please. You lived with us for free. For free, I repeated, my voice steady but sharp. I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the repairs, your remodel, your car insurance. I even covered the damn air conditioner when it broke in July. She opened her mouth, then closed it, caught off guard. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. She stepped closer, her perfume stale under the fluorescent light. You're jealous, she hissed. That's what this is. You can't stand that Michael has a wife who runs his house now. I stared at her for a moment, almost pitying her. Jealous of what? The man you've turned into a beggar? The life you can't afford without my signature? Her face flushed deep red. You're a bitter old woman who can't let go of control. Control, I said, almost smiling. I gave you control years ago, Kayla. You just mistook it for ownership. Michael's miserable without you, she shouted, the first hint of desperation leaking through. He hasn't slept in days. Is he miserable because he misses me? Or because he misses my money? Her mouth twitched, and I knew I'd hit the mark. She dropped her gaze. You're going to ruin everything we built. No, Kayla. You ruined it the moment you thought humiliating me would make you feel powerful. She glared at me, eyes glistening, not with remorse, but with hatred. You think you've won, don't you? You think cutting us off makes you strong. I don't think I've won, I said quietly. I know I'm finally free. Her jaw tightened. You can't just walk away from family. I can when family stops acting like family. There was a long, heavy pause between us. Then she spat out the truth, the one she'd tried to bury under all that fake sweetness. Fine. You want the truth? We never wanted you in that house. You were always a burden. Michael only kept you there because he felt guilty after his dad died. For a second, the words cut deeper than I expected. But then, like salt on a wound that finally starts to heal, they burned away the last trace of illusion. Thank you, I said softly, for your honesty. She blinked, thrown off. What? You just made leaving even easier. I started to close the door. Kayla stepped forward, fury igniting again. You can't do this, Evelyn. Without you, we'll lose everything. That's your problem, not mine. Her voice cracked. You're abandoning your son. I looked her straight in the eyes. No, Kayla. My son abandoned me the night he stood by and watched you make me crawl on the floor. Her lips trembled. This isn't over. You're right, I said. It's just beginning, for me. And then I closed the door. When the hallway finally fell silent, I sat on the bed, hands trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of reclaiming my life. It was strange how confrontation could feel both exhausting and cleansing. I had spent years avoiding conflict, smoothing edges, apologizing for existing. Now speaking the truth felt like oxygen. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Michael. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and began searching flights to Phoenix. Linda, my cousin, had called earlier that day after I'd left her a voicemail. Come here, Evie, she'd said in that bright, comforting voice I remembered from childhood. I've got space, sunshine, and people who don't treat you like a maid. Phoenix. Warm air, red rocks, open sky. A city where no one knew my past. I stared at the flight options, heart steady. Departure. Monday morning. Perfect. Before shutting the laptop, I glanced once more at the balance in my new account. Still safe. Still mine. A knock echoed faintly from the room next door. Someone else's argument. Someone else's chaos. For once, it wasn't mine to fix. I lay down on the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, and whispered to myself, they can call lawyers. They can call social workers. They can knock on every door in Dallas. Then, with a small smile, but they can't call me home. The air in Phoenix smelled like new beginnings, dusty, sun-warmed, and faintly sweet from the desert blooms. I'd been there 2 months already, and yet every morning still felt like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. Linda's house sat on the edge of the city, a low adobe home painted the color of sand. From the backyard, you could see the mountains rising purple in the distance. Every morning, I drank coffee on her patio, watching sunlight spill over the cactus garden. "You're finally starting to look alive again," Linda said one morning, setting down her mug beside mine. "Alive?" I smiled. "Maybe, just still learning what that feels like." She chuckled. "That's the best part. You get to learn it all over." And she was right. The first few weeks, I'd felt awkwardly free, like a bird too long in a cage forgetting how to use its wings. I joined a painting class at the community center, bought myself a small sedan, and filled my closet with colors that weren't beige or borrowed. For the first time in decades, every decision I made was mine. Then one afternoon, as I was trimming the lavender bush by the porch, Linda called out, "Evie, there's a man at the gate." A man. 2, actually. Even before I saw them clearly, I knew. Michael looked thinner, his shirt wrinkled, eyes sunken from sleeplessness, and beside him stood Kayla, stripped of her shine, her hair unkempt, her expensive blouse replaced by something faded and ordinary. I set the pruning shears down. "Of course," I whispered to myself. They found me. Linda hovered behind me. "Do you want me to send them away?" "No," I said quietly. "Let's see what they've come for." When I opened the front door, Michael exhaled with visible relief. "Mom, thank God. I've been calling you for weeks. You changed your number." "I did. Can we come in, please?" Linda gave me a questioning look. I nodded slightly. Just for a few minutes. They sat awkwardly in the living room, dwarfed by Linda's cheerful southwestern decor. Michael kept wringing his hands. Kayla stared at the floor. "Where are you staying?" I asked. "In a small apartment," Michael said. "Just 1 bedroom for now. We lost the house." I felt a pang. Grief. Not for the house itself, but for the years I'd poured into it, the dinners, the laughter, even the pain. "I'm sorry," I said softly. Kayla's chin lifted. "It's been hard, but we're trying to start over." I could hear the rehearsed note in her voice, the same false sincerity she used when she thanked dinner guests. "Why are you here, Michael?" He hesitated. "To bring you home. We need you." I folded my hands in my lap. "To bring me home, or to bring my money home?" "Mom, please," he protested. "Don't say that. We're family." "Yes," I said. "And when I was family, you made me scrub the floor in front of strangers." His face tightened. "That was a mistake. We were both under stress. Stress doesn't turn people cruel, Michael. It reveals that they already are." Kayla jumped in, voice trembling. "Evelyn, I came here to apologize." "Go on." "I was awful that night. I know that now. I was jealous." "Jealous?" She nodded, tears gathering. "You were always the center of his world. He compared me to you constantly. How you cooked, how you managed everything. I felt like I'd never measure up." I lashed out. It was the closest she'd ever come to honesty, and for a flicker of a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. "Jealousy doesn't excuse humiliation, Kayla." "I know." She sniffled, gripping her purse like a lifeline. "But we can make things right. If you come back, we can be a family again." I leaned back. "Back to what? The maid who pays the bills?" "No," Michael said quickly. "We'll change, I swear. We'll find a bigger place. Between the 3 of us." "Between the 3 of us," I interrupted. "Or between the 3 of us and my bank account." Kayla's eyes darted to Michael. Silence thickened in the room. Finally, Michael said quietly, "Mom, how much would it take for you to come home?" The words hit like a slap. "You're trying to buy forgiveness now?" "No, maybe we can help each other. You could stay with us again. We'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about money." I almost laughed at the irony. I never worried about money. I worried about love, and I was right to. They both fell silent. I studied their faces, the desperation, the exhaustion. It wasn't remorse that had brought them here. It was survival. And that's when the idea struck me. I stood and walked to the small desk by the window. From a drawer, I pulled out an envelope and counted out 5 crisp $1,000 bills. I set them on the coffee table. "Here's my offer," I said calmly. $5,000. In cash. You can take it right now, no strings attached. But in exchange, I don't want to hear from either of you again for 5 years. Not a call, not a text, nothing. Their eyes widened. 5 years? Michael repeated. Mom, that's insane. Is it? You said this isn't about money, so 5,000 should be enough to ease your conscience. Kayla looked at the bills, then at me. That won't even cover the deposit on a new apartment. Thank you, I said quietly. You've just answered my question. Michael's face reddened. You're testing us? I'm confirming what I already know. Kayla shot up from the couch. You think you're so righteous, don't you? You think you're teaching us some kind of lesson. No, I said. Lessons are for people who want to learn. Her voice cracked. You're cruel. I've been kind for too long. Michael stood too, his tone breaking between anger and pleading. Mom, we're desperate. Please, we can't do this without you. Yes, you can, I said softly. You just don't want to. He looked at me with wet eyes, a boy again for a flicker of a second. I'm your son. And I was your mother, I said. But that didn't stop you from standing by while your wife made me crawl. He flinched. The room went very quiet. Kayla muttered, This isn't over, and stormed toward the door. Michael lingered for a moment longer, shoulders sagging. Mom, he whispered, I don't know how to fix this. By growing up, I said. By working for what you have. By earning the life you want instead of inheriting the one I built. He nodded once, defeated, then followed Kayla out. I watched them through the window as they walked down the dusty path to their car. She was scolding him already, her hands slicing through the air. He just kept his head down. When the car disappeared around the corner, I sat on the couch and stared at the untouched envelope of cash. My hands trembled slightly, not with regret but release. Linda entered quietly, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. I didn't want to interrupt. You heard everything, didn't you? She smiled softly. You mean, did I hear you win your own life back? Yeah, I did. I laughed, though my eyes stung. I didn't feel like I was winning, just ending something that needed to end. Linda sat beside me. Sometimes ending something is the victory. We clinked glasses. The ice cubes cracked, a clean final sound. That night, I stepped out onto the porch. The desert was quiet except for the hum of crickets. I looked up at the wide Arizona sky. No fences, no walls, just space. For years, my world had been confined to a single house, a single family, a single version of myself. And now, here I was, 65 years old, finally free enough to choose who I'd be next. I thought of the $5,000 sitting on the table inside. Tomorrow, I'd donate it to the community center that ran the painting classes. Let something good come from it. Because I'd already bought what I needed most. Freedom. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The horizon glowed pink and gold, the first light spilling over the mountains. I brewed coffee, stepped outside barefoot, and whispered to the dawn. They came for my money. They left with their reflection. And somewhere between the desert wind and the rising sun, I knew. I didn't lose my family that night in Dallas. They lost me. 6 months later, the Arizona sun had tanned my skin and softened my sorrow. I no longer woke up thinking about Dallas or about the house I once scrubbed on my knees. Instead, I woke to the smell of desert air drifting through open windows, to the sound of Linda humming in the kitchen, to the small, steady rhythm of a life that finally belonged to me. Mornings had become my favorite time. I'd make coffee, strong, black, just the way Robert used to like it, and carry it out to the backyard. The mountains blushed pink under the rising sun, and the world seemed brand new. Linda would join me a few minutes later, barefoot and smiling, holding her own cup. "You always beat me to the sunrise," she'd tease. "Old habits die hard," I'd reply. "Except now, no one's waiting for breakfast." She laughed, the kind of warm laughter that healed instead of hurt. In Phoenix, everything was slower, kinder. I joined a small community center where I painted twice a week. Landscapes, mostly, but sometimes portraits of women whose faces carried whole stories. The other members called me Evie, and for the first time in decades, I liked the sound of my own name without mom or grandma attached to it. I was learning to live again, to spend money without guilt, to rest without asking permission. One bright morning, I decided to take myself out to lunch at a Mexican cafe downtown. I'd become fond of the place, La Paloma Azul, where the waiter always called me Señora Elegante and brought extra lime slices for my iced tea. I was halfway through my enchiladas when my phone buzzed. A number from Dallas. For a moment I considered ignoring it, but curiosity, or perhaps compassion, made me swipe to answer. "Mrs. Parker?" The voice was unfamiliar. "This is Sandra Garcia, the social worker who spoke to you a few months ago." "Oh, hello, Sandra. Is something wrong?" "Not at all, ma'am. I just wanted to inform you that your file's been officially closed. You're listed as independent and financially stable." I smiled. "That's lovely to hear." "There's one more thing," she continued, hesitating. "We received another call from your son last month." I closed my eyes. "Of course you did." This time he was concerned about your mental capacity. He suggested you might not be managing your finances responsibly. I laughed, shaking my head. "Let me guess. He asked if someone could help me handle my accounts." "Something along those lines, yes." "Well, Sandra, please note in your file that my mind is intact. My bank account is healthy, and my patience is gone." She chuckled softly. "Understood, ma'am." Before hanging up, she added, "I've seen a lot of families, Mrs. Parker. What you did, leaving, setting boundaries, it takes courage. Most never do." "Courage," I repeated. It felt more like survival at the time. "Sometimes they're the same thing," she said. And then the line clicked off. That evening, as I sat painting on the patio, Linda came out with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Who was on the phone?" "The social worker from Dallas," I said. "Apparently my son is still trying to save me from my own independence." She rolled her eyes. "That boy could win an Olympic medal in missing the point." I smiled faintly. "He doesn't understand that I'm happy. Maybe he never will." Linda put a hand on my shoulder. "He'll either learn or he won't. But you can't keep teaching the same lesson forever." "I know." I looked at my half-finished canvas, an open desert road stretching toward the horizon. "That's why I'm painting new ones." Weeks passed in peaceful rhythm, painting, reading, long drives to nowhere in particular. I even started attending a photography class. There, surrounded by people my age who refused to shrink into invisibility, I discovered something remarkable. Freedom can be ordinary. One afternoon as I drove home from class, my phone rang again. Another Dallas number. I sighed but answered anyway. "Mom," Michael's voice. I hadn't heard it in months. "Yes, Michael. I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to let you know that Kayla and I separated." I didn't respond right away. The desert road ahead shimmered in the heat. "I see. She left 2 weeks ago. Said she couldn't handle the stress anymore. I guess she thought I'd have money again soon." He gave a weak, bitter laugh. "And how are you?" I asked quietly. "Tired. Working 2 jobs. Trying to pay off the debt." "Good. I said simply. He exhaled. Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I'm sorry. For everything. For that night. For what I said. For what I didn't say. Do you mean that? Yes, I really do. I've had a lot of time to think. And what have you realized? That I treated you like a safety net instead of a person. That I let someone else decide what kind of son I'd be. His voice cracked. That I lost my mother long before you left. Something in me softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Michael, I said gently, you didn't lose me. You let me go. There's a difference. He was silent for a long moment. Can we start over? I hesitated. The woman I used to be, the one who would have jumped at the chance, was gone. The new me had learned that starting over didn't always mean going back. I'm proud you're working, I said finally, and I wish you well. But I'm not coming back, Michael. I know. I just wanted to hear your voice. When he hung up, I sat there in the car for a long while, the sound of cicadas buzzing outside. For the first time, his voice hadn't carried entitlement or guilt, only exhaustion and a trace of humility. Maybe someday that would be enough. That night, I told Linda about the call. Do you think he's changed? She asked. I think he's starting to learn, I said. The hard way, but sometimes that's the only way. She nodded thoughtfully. And how do you feel? Light, I said. Like I've stopped carrying something that was never mine to carry. Linda smiled. That's what dignity feels like. On the morning of my 66th birthday, I woke to the smell of cinnamon rolls baking. Linda was in the kitchen, wearing an apron that said, Queen of Everything. You didn't, I said, laughing. Oh, I did, she said, proudly setting a tray on the table. And there's one more surprise. She handed me a wrapped box. Inside was a camera, sleek, modern, beautiful. You keep painting the same horizon, she said. I figured it's time you captured it for real. I hugged her tightly. Thank you, Linda. The rest of the day was simple. Music, laughter, and photos under the blazing Arizona sky. That night, I uploaded the pictures onto my laptop. In one of them, I was laughing, my hair wild in the wind. For the first time in years, I didn't see a tired woman or a mother defined by loss. I saw someone reborn. A week later, I drove out alone to the mountains before dawn, camera in hand. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, gold and violet under the early light. I took photo after photo, rocks, clouds, the sun rising like a slow, quiet miracle. And when the first rays touched my face, I whispered, Thank you, life, for not giving up on me even when I did. In that moment, I thought of Robert. I imagined him watching somewhere, smiling that calm, patient smile of his. He'd always told me, Evelyn, dignity is the one thing no one can take from you, unless you hand it over. He was right. I had handed it over once, but I'd taken it back. That evening, Linda and I sat on the patio again, sipping iced tea as the desert cooled. Do you ever miss Dallas? She asked. I thought about it. The house, the noise, the way I used to flinch at every demand. No, I said finally. I miss who I thought I was supposed to be, but not the woman I was there. Linda smiled. You've changed, Evie. I've come home, I said simply, just not to a place, to myself. The desert stars began to appear, one by one, bright and unashamed. I raised my glass to them. To freedom, Linda said. To dignity, I replied. And as the night wrapped around us like a promise, I knew the truth at last. I had lost my old life, yes, but what I'd gained was far greater. I had learned to live without guilt. I had remembered my worth. And I had been reborn, not as someone's mother or servant or savior, but as Evelyn Parker, a woman free at last.